All right, so I think we can get started. Today is the first day of our third module. Okay, so we had module one. We talked about brains and how our body processes the social and emotional competences. Then in module two, we started talking about positive discipline, how it's developed, how it was developed, and what's behind the behavior, the fundamentals of the positive discipline approach. And today we start module three, which is one lesson only, so it's just today, about how to balance the curricula and the social and emotional learning. Okay, so that's module three. And then we'll have module four, behavior management strategies, which starts tomorrow. It's our replacement class. So we are going to start module 4 tomorrow. Okay, we're going to have 2 lessons. And module 5 is the spotlight will be on you girls because it's the meeting in which you are going to share with me how you have been building a real life social and emotional learning experience at your classes. And during module 4, I'm going to help you out and how to implement, how to embed the social and emotional learning into your daily practice. Okay? So basically, that's sorry?
I just have one.
Okay.
Because I got a lot of invitations for the classes. I wasn't sure if it was just tomorrow or if you're gonna do every Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm a bit confused. So the makeup class is only tomorrow.
Yeah, it's only tomorrow, and then we are going
Okay.
to carry on only Tuesdays until the end of the course.
Okay. All right then.
Okay? So
All right. Thank
basically,
you.
that's how our calendar looks like. Today, we will learn about how to balance an SEL and curriculum. Then we'll have 2 lessons on behavior management strategies, and those are really practical lessons. And from those 2 lessons, you are going to get tools to implement into your own classrooms. So in module 4, you are going to get the tools that I'm going to share with you. They are all positive discipline tools, and you're going to choose some, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to support you in this process of choosing what is more suitable for your group, and you are going to implement these tools with your group. And on April 6th, our last lesson, we'll have a sharing session. So you will share how the social and emotional learning has been going in your classroom. Okay? So this is how our calendar looks like. All right. So now, Tali, I brought here some quotes as provocations, okay? And basically, we're going to do something called Read It and Exemplify It. So I got some quotes, and as I read them, you try to exemplify how you've seen that in your classes or how you imagine that could be happening, but always picturing your classes, your kids, your school. So always picturing your teaching context. Okay? So the first one is no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. And what can you see on your teaching context that could back you up on it?
I'd say.
Yeah, brilliant. And here I have four, but I think they'll all be yours today. So when you see communication is about two brains getting along, what comes to your mind?
Oh, that's beautiful actually. Because I always say communication is the most important things that two human beings can have, but it's the most thing people struggle to have.
Yeah,
Because it's amazing how communication is a problem sometimes between people, and I'm not just talking about student and teachers, like sometimes among staff and in relationships with families. So I think that's something that we should learn how to do that
Yeah,
better.
it was the very first thing we learned in our course. How two brains, remember that we had a model with our hand on it,
Yeah,
how one brain can model another brain during communication, and how that process can be either very effective and positive, or it can totally break up the communication and the chance of a good relationship, right? The
yeah.
second one is kind and firm as the way for democratic classroom management. What comes to your mind when you see this quote?
So actually, something really interesting happened yesterday. I was telling that there was another teacher who was talking to me about a student, and I told him about this course, and he's like, "Oh my God, I want to know more about it, and can you help me?" And and then he said, "Oh, two students in my class are bullying each other."
Yeah, so this quote is about another fundamental of the positive discipline approach, which is firmness and kindness. So the combination of an environment where there is high kindness and high firmness, we have a democratic classroom management style. We have the positive discipline. We have students being heard and being embraced, but we also have students being provided with routines, consistency, healthy authority systems, and
Yeah,
being respectful. They have rules, they have procedures. There is a law in that environment. And the next one is our pupils need encouragement. What comes to your mind when you think of encouragement? Yeah,
that's
totally. When we talk about encouragement, we're talking about this big positive discipline concept brought up by Alfred Adler and Dr. Rudolf Drakers, remember? And the this big concept is about the fact that every person is looking for a feeling of belongingness and contribution. So when you feel encouraged, when you feel that you belong, you feel that you matter, that you are being heard, you are encouraged, your brain works towards um, being a positive influence for the other people around you. Okay. And the last one is there is a mistaken goal behind challenging behavior. What comes to your mind when you see that? Yeah, so we learned in the previous module that according to the positive discipline approach, there are four types of goals behind all sorts of behavior. And it's not like we are labeling the kids according to goals, but we use the goals to help us find out what's going on the kids' minds. And I left on Google Classroom that chart that you can print and have it with you in your classroom with the steps to help you identify each of those goals. So we have the goal of undue attention, revenge, a misguided power, and assumed inadequacy. Okay, those were the four ones we studied about.
I already have it laminated on my desk.
Yeah, you do. That's lovely. Very good for your students. And today we are going to look at ways to balance those two things because at one side we have academics curriculum. We do have standardized tests. Sometimes we do not like it. We do not mention them. But most of the schools, they work towards this big task that students they may need to pass, whether if it's a vestibular in Brazil or some other kind of test from the country or language proficiency test at the end of a course. But we do have some tests, and they are like ghosts walking around our plannings. We do have assessment, parent meetings. They want to know the grades. They want to know how the children are doing. We often have 40-minute classes or less. And we also have to follow a textbook or methodology. All right. But at the other side, we've been studying about positive discipline, the sense of significance and belongingness. We have learned about the five core social and emotional competencies, which are relationship skills, social awareness, self self-management and responsible decision making. And how can we balance, how can we put the two things together? Okay, so before you start crossing things from your class planning, or before you start crying saying that that's impossible, let's scan. Okay, and when I mean scan, and when I say scan, I mean scan yourself first. And I brought this illustration here because that is a point in which all of us as teachers have already been in our careers. Some at the very beginning when we didn't have much experience. Some of us might be still at that point in our careers. Or sometimes teachers were very creative and engaged and innovative for many years, and now they are at the end of their careers. They are not very motivated, they are almost retiring, and they get back to being a tourist teacher. So we can be a tourist teacher in different phases of our lives. And what is this tourist teacher? Um, First, he smiles. He when he smiles, when he talks, and he is the only one excited about what he's teaching, and he doesn't kind of care if the kids are excited or not. He's the only one excited. Okay, the tourist teacher also says, I decided the pace and the process. Okay, so he is the tourist, and imagine that he's visiting the learning land, he is visiting the classroom, just passing by, and he decides the pace and the process. So if he sees something interesting, he stops by. If he sees that something is not that interesting, it's not worth it, then he rushes through it. He decides the pace and the process. Okay. The tourist teacher also carries a fanny pack, and he has on it all the resources. All the resources are prepared by the teacher. Okay, so from the planning to charts and posters and artworks, everything comes from the teacher. And when students produce something, it needs to be a copy of what the teacher produced. Tourist teacher also wears a socks, high socks. I try to be relevant, but I was like the dude wearing high socks and sandals. So it's irrelevant if you were wearing high socks, but then you were wearing a sandal. Like, what's the point of it? So the tourist teacher do things without thinking, without a point. Okay, the tourist teacher also holds a map, and he chooses where to go. He has a camera because he is the only one documenting the learning. And he has an accurate depiction of receding hairline on top. But what I mean with this drawing here is that when the teacher is the tourist and he sees the students at this as this landscape that is there to be seen and passive, or it's there to be taught, and that's it. The students do not have any voice, they do not have any active contribution, any active participation in the learning process. Okay, and during today's lessons, we are going to learn several tools on how not to be a tourist teacher, but how to be an active teacher who is um, exploring the learning of the students, really trying to understand, really trying to be flexible and to be part of it. Okay. So here's,
Sorry, B.
yes.
Just because I'm the only one, I just need to go get some water. But if you want to continue for the recording, that's okay. I'm just letting
No,
you know, okay? So you're not talking to
no,
anyone.
right. I'm going to pause the recording and then you tell me when you are back. Okay. All right. So now we are going to look at some tools that we said first scan. Before you start, first you scan. So after scanning yourself and making sure you're not a tourist teacher, let's scan some other areas of our profession and how they looking at those areas could help us balance the curriculum and the social and emotional skills. Okay. And so first, professional development. Develop a common understanding of SAL first for yourself and then as a team, if possible, as a team. But first for yourself, it's what you were already doing. And so it's almost impossible to collaborate with others without a common understanding of what's social and emotional learning, because that goes, you know, um, when we talk about SAL, there are many misconceptions among educators, and some others think that SALs are just a set of behavior and attitudes that kids should only learn at home. Sometimes they think it's something that's only necessary for kids that have a diagnosis. So it's really important that first you have this common and an evidence based understanding of SAL as you are doing this course. And if possible, to spread it to your team, as you mentioned in the beginning of the lesson. You might explore the case website that we talked about at the beginning of the course, or read a book, a couple of articles together. You can discuss this to make sure you're all on the same page about what SAL is and why it's important. Something nice that you could have concerning professional development is to have a book club with some teachers that are interested in it. And I've done that several times as a teacher where I work, to have a book club with other teachers. And this is a really nice way to spread the word about SAL.
I actually have two questions
Yes?
for you. So the first question is, we are going actually to have a professional development next month, and I was gonna ask you if I have the permission to use your slides to make a presentation to my, because that's already on my mind that I want everyone to know.
Sure,
But
totally.
yay, thank you. And the other thing is, so yesterday I was talking to another teacher about this, and then he said, "Oh, but I have a lot of students in my class who are special needs. That's not something I can do. Nothing I can do about that." And then I was like, "Okay, but you can still like implement."
Yeah. So when you have a teacher or a colleague that first, the first thing she says that I'm not their parents, so I shouldn't be teaching that. What's behind that is that this teacher thinks that social and emotional skills are just a set of behaviors, behavior and attitudes, like saying yes, please, thank you, no, I'm sorry, and eating manners and everything. So, things that kids should learn at home. So, the first step is to get to this common understanding that social and emotional skills, they are the foundations for any learning that will go on in the brain. They are the open gate, like they are the in the this big gate on a person's brain, and all learning, all communication go through this gate. And this gate is a tiny entrance like that. The amount of learning that will go in that brain, that will get to the memory areas, that will get to the auditory, visual, motor, speech areas is very small. So the greater this gate is, the greater the learning will be. And this is the big concept that this teacher needs to understand, that it's not about being a parent, or I'm not being paid to be a psychologist or therapist, but it's about something that you do so your own work is successful. Because if you neglect the social and emotional skills, you might get yourself wondering some months from now why my students are not learning, why are they misbehaving, why are my classes not being successful. And when you look back, you are going to see that you've neglected the social and emotional skills for several times. And that's the big answer. The gate is too small. So, therefore, the learning does not pass through the gate. Okay?
Okay,
Did I answer your question?
that's a good one. I
Yes?
like it.
Okay. Yeah, I used to use that one with other teachers. It usually works. So, another thing we should scan in order to help as balance, social and emotional learning with the curriculum, is to identify what your students need. So look through your academic standards, okay, regardless of the curriculum you follow, and try to find the social and emotional skills in there. In Brazil, we have BNCC. Sometimes we have I work at an IB World School, so we have the IB standards. We have the New York Common Core. We have several documents that regulate education. And inside all of those documents, social and emotional skills are there. If you read the documents, in details, you are going to see that the skills are there. Teachers just skip those pages. They skip those bullet points and go to the parts that matter, the contents that need to be taught in first grade, the contents that need to be taught in middle school. But try to find it in your school documents, in your curriculum. It's another point that you're going to have when you talk to your staff, team, and leaders. Okay, so it's in our documents and we are not doing it. Also, observe your students in action and look for strengths and skills that are missing. Share this together with the students and identify a few priorities. So be very honest with your group. Guys, I can see that you are very creative. You have a good bond. You are all friends. You were respectful. But, guys, you are not very good listeners. And I think this is a priority. This is something we should work on as a group. So you are a stronger group. So you are a stronger learner. Be very honest with the students. And what skills are most important for them? Have you ever asked your students that? What skills are important for you? When we ask them, what do you want to learn? Sometimes they do not know what to answer because they do not have, this background knowledge of school, school academic contents. But what things are important for you as a person? What things are important so you live together well here in our classroom and at your home? So being very honest with them will also help you balance and identify the SALs into your curriculum. Okay? Another one is to look up, scan yourself, and look for your best practices. Identify what you are already doing because I believe that there's, much you are already doing. Surely you are doing things to help your students develop the skills they need. What practices and structures are strong across your own teaching, across the school, across your team? Which ones are some teachers using successfully that others might try? You can have teacher meetings, you can have book clubs, you can grab a coffee or schedule a Zoom call and get a glass of wine or something with some teacher friends and swap some strategies. What have been successful? Sometimes when we get together as teachers and we talk about students, all we can talk about is the things that are not being successful. We can only talk about what's not working, but there's plenty working. If we look up since the beginning of our teaching careers, we've done a lot of amazing stuff. And sometimes what we do, and it feels so natural to us, it feels so natural for us to do it. Sometimes it's not natural for another teacher. And when you have those sharing moments, that's when you learn from each other. Okay? And also, when you scan yourself and you look at all this, show yourself one small step. Be careful not to bite off more than you can chew. I know social and emotional learning can be very exciting, and we feel like we want to have it all together at the same lesson with all the 30 kids at the same time tomorrow at 7 a.m. or in your case, Talita, today in a few hours. But that's not the case. We need to show ourselves a small step. Set priorities, and not our priorities because we are not tourist teachers, but to discuss with our group, with our kids, which are your priorities. And then we brainstorm possible next steps and keep things small and manageable. So when you are starting to practice social and emotional learning with a group of kids, remember those two golden rules. Keep it small, keep it manageable. Okay? It's better to keep it small and manageable, but consistent than to keep a big, huge, complicated project with no consistency. Okay? Then you're going to be contradicting yourself. So here are some student focused solutions, okay? And for very young learners, something that really works in the routine is to have the feelings check in every morning. So whenever you meet, when sometimes we just get them in a circle and say, "Hi guys, how are you today? How are you feeling? How was your weekend?" But what about those questions? How are you feeling right now? How are things going at school? How are things going at home? How are your friendships going? Okay. And we can either ask and let them verbally share, or they can have like stickers or something. They entered your classroom if you're a specialist and they are visiting your classroom. They go there to a class and then they leave. They could have something by the door and put like their name tags or photos close to a face that represents how they are feeling. And that could be some evidence for you to work on what's going on with your students, okay? And for more like younger learners but lower primary, we can also work on what was your favorite part of the day, what was your least favorite part of the day, because it's always good to balance, the positive things and also acknowledge and embrace what was not very good. What are you thankful for? What do you look forward to? Those are questions that, used with consistency, they will foster social and emotional learning. Okay. Also, with young learners in lower primary, you can have a drawing moment in which they choose an emotion. This is how I feel today. And they draw or write whatever is on their mind. And this is a very interesting moment because they do not have to draw why they are angry or why they are happy, but whatever comes to their mind, which will, as we know as educators, which will be related to the feeling. I once had a student and that she would always put mad, mad, and mad. And when I asked her to draw whatever it was on her mind, she would always draw herself, and she would just scratch all over her figure on the paper and put lots of red things around her. And we ended up knowing, like some months later, that it was a self-image problem. So it was the way she saw herself. And at first, when she circled mad and would make this drawing, she didn't have any idea of this relationship. But as the time passed, we helped her understand what her drawings were telling her. So the drawings were telling her that there was something going on with self-image, and of course we could support and handle it as a school, but also the help of a therapist was really necessary. Here I have an example of how to have social and emotional learning talks with upper primary and secondary learners. Okay, this is a model of an I can board. And the I can boards, you as a teacher or as a group, you define some key sentences and some key sentences that will represent your learning targets for a project or for a week or during a month. This is something you must agree on with your students. Okay, and the idea is that at the end of that period, that week or that project, they are able to honestly say, I can, and state that information about themselves. Okay, so this is something really nice to do with older students because more reflection is required, both to establish the sentences, establish a goal, a target, but it's a very nice board to have it in your class. And it's like this big visual reminder of what they are looking forward to. So, guys, this is where we want to get with it. We want all of us to be able to say, I can and contribute with relevant knowledge and skills and ideas, or I can seek and build a range of ideas from others. This is where we want to get. Okay, those are the skills we want to acquire. And we can also work with journaling as a way of of SAL talks. Okay, and what it's nice to do with other students is to have this scale of self-care and physical, emotional, social, mental health, stress, and alone time. And of course, before you start that, you would explain why each of those items represents self-care and why they are important for us to develop, to have a healthy social and emotional development. And students can have a journal where they mark from 1 to 10 how they are at that day. And if they are comfortable, they can share the journal with you and you can talk at the end of the class about it. Okay? Another strategy that helps you as a starter when you are balancing curriculum and social and emotional learning is to elevate students' voice. When you provide all students with opportunities to be leaders, problem solvers, and decision makers, those three roles should replace the role of a listener, a mere listener in a class. So traditionally, we would see the figure of the student as a mere listener, but actually, to foster healthy social and emotional development, to foster lifelong skills, they need to practice being leaders, problem solvers, and decision makers. And they are going to make many mistakes trying to perform those roles. And that's okay. They are practicing, they are learning. Just as in math, they will make several multiplication mistakes and they're going to try all over again. They will make mistakes and try again, but it's very important we provide them with opportunities to lead a small group. Or when we have a problem, we do not solve the problem for the group, they are the problem solvers. We have a big decision to make, a decision, for example, about the type of assessment at the end of a project. As a teacher, you can take three types of assessment ideas actually, and you can make a decision as a group. How would the group be, more fairly assessed? And then you make this decision. All right. And also to foster academic mindsets. When you help your students see themselves as learners and feel like they have something to contribute to their own learning. So, as in this example of the assessment, I said, so how can this group be more fairly assessed? Okay, guys, we have this option A and B. Help me choose in here. Or, guys, we have two activities and we have only 40 minutes. How should we split the time? How can we manage the time? In which activity do you think you're going to spend more time on? And then afterwards, was your decision good? Was it not good? Why? What makes you say that? So, all those teacher decisions that we usually make every day, we could share the decisions with the students. Okay, and choice and agency. Okay, agency is when we share the lead of the learning with the student. Okay, we set adventurous goals, we initiate action towards those goals, reflect and revise, internalize, and generate self-efficacy. Those four steps to set the goals, you do that as a group. You can do that as a group, for example, in that case, that the group, the kids were not good listeners, or guys, I see that you were friends, but then sometimes you get too talkative and it takes you a long time to settle in. It takes you a long time to get started with your lesson. Let's set a goal, okay, with awareness, intentionally. Planful, let's use our planful competence to set this classroom goal. Then we initiate the action towards this goal of being less talkative and have more positive talk, more productive talk in class, regulate ourselves, okay? But we're gonna have autonomy to communicate by regulating ourselves. Then we revise and reflect during weeks, during several days. How do you think you were doing? Do you think we are having more productive time? Do you think your attitude is still counterproductive? How do you think your learning is being affected because of the group's attitude? And at the end, you internalize the learning, ways to have a positive and productive talk and being more efficient, okay, and empowered. Some teacher focused solution. First, use instructional practices and structures that encourage student led discussions, interactions, and teamwork. That's basically what I've told you in a previous slide. But this little flower in here could also be laminated and kept on your desk because it's a reminder of what active learning is. And in the flower's six petals, you will see some things that cannot be missing from your group. If you want them to be productive, if you want them to have a healthy social and emotional development, those flower petals should be there. Okay, so whenever you are teaching or at the end of your day, at the end of your week, at least once a week, get a minute to look at this flower and analyze how your teaching has been going. Okay. Another tool you can use is to change your planning. So we are going to learn today after the little break a strategy to plan and find the social and emotional find room for social and emotional learning and a planning. So be able and open to change the way you plan the lessons, okay? So let's take like a quick break, 3 or 5 minutes. And then at the second part, I'm going to help you out in planning a lesson that balances both curriculum and social and emotional learning, okay? All right, can we carry on? Can you carry on, Tanya? Are you there? Tell me when you are ready, and then we can start, okay? All right. Before we start, I would like to tell you that in this
Your
class,
microphone is off.
thank you. Before we start, just to share that I left in Google Classroom, okay, in this lessons post, a file with lots of social and emotional learning free activities. There are two PDFs, but when you open the PDFs, there are links to download several free activities that you can print out or you can adapt and start using with the students like tomorrow. They are totally adaptable to remote learning as well, so you can use in online classrooms. So there is this set of activities in Google Classroom. Okay? And let's start to shape the planning. So, welcome to fifth grade. Here we are. We are in fifth grade. I want to embed social emotional learning in my class. How can I do it with the fifth graders? We are looking at the curriculum, then we are looking at the SALs, the five essential competencies we've been talking about: self awareness, self management, social awareness, responsible decision making, and relationship skills. They're going to guide us in how to shape the planning. Okay? So, we are here, but then the students get in the classroom. And when they get to the classroom, we often forget about both the planning we had and the social emotional learning. And sometimes we're just so overwhelmed because they're a new group, a new students, and so many issues. As your friend mentioned to you, I have too many kids with special needs in my class. It's overwhelming. I can't do it. And all the things become blurry and we cannot see a way out. And here is the way out. First, you look at what you were teaching, not what in detail, like I am teaching this kind of pronoun. What you were teaching, we're teaching pronouns. Okay. We're teaching writing. Okay. So get this big concept you were teaching. And you were going to make a bubble planning. A bubble planning is when you put the areas the areas that are your targets, so the social emotional learning skills, and some speech bubbles for each of them. Like each skill is telling you something. Each skill is looking at you and saying, "This is how I could help." I got here an example of a fifth grade language arts lesson. So they are working on regular fifth grade writing. Okay, let's look at the social emotional learning skills and how they can contribute. What are they telling us? Self awareness is telling us use context to confirm, or self correction, word recognition and understanding, rereading when necessary. This is totally suitable to any writing project that you develop. And if you encourage your students to self correct, to recognize and understand the words they are using, to reread when it's necessary, you are fostering self awareness. And therefore, you are fostering social and emotional learning. Okay? Relationship skills is telling us with guidance and support from peers and adults, develop and strengthen writing as needed. So, relationship skills is telling us that she can help by working with peers, by providing feedback and receiving feedback. And this is how we could support social and emotional learning even during a writing lesson in fifth grade. Responsible decision making is telling us to come to discussions prepared, having read or studied required material, follow agreed upon rules for discussions, carry out assigned roles. So often, when we are working through a writing project, we often have a mentor text. We often have something they have to read, like in poetry. They need to read that poet's work, and then we're discussing class. Being responsible enough to handle time, to manage time, come to discussions prepared with the required studies or materials ready. This is being responsible. This is making good use of one's time, and we are fostering social and emotional learning. Self management is telling that she can help us when we develop and strengthen writing as needed by planning, revising, editing, rewriting, or trying a new approach. So, when you learn how to manage your own ideas, and okay, this is a suitable idea, okay, this is not very suitable for this text's purpose, okay, I need to change the words, I need to change the style, and I'm flexible. I'm a flexible thinker. And when you provide a class, like you plan a class for them to get their reading, their writing works, and work on revising and editing and rewriting, you are fostering social and emotional learning through your curriculum. And social awareness is telling us that she can help. But when we ask students to describe how a narrator's or speaker's point of view influences how events are described, so when we work on understanding a character, for example, we are fostering social awareness, which is a social and emotional skill. Also, when students engage in a range of collaborative discussions with diverse partners on grade 5 topics and texts, building others' ideas, expressing their own ideas clearly, we are also fostering social and emotional learning. into the curriculum. So during this whole cycle, we haven't stopped teaching the curriculum a single class. We kept teaching the curriculum, we kept teaching the standards as the documents tells us. We just opened up some rooms for a more flexible approach that embraces each of those the five core competencies for social and emotional development. Okay? Now I'm going to share on the chat a link for a Jamboard. That's it. Okay. Yeah. A link for a Jamboard for us to work together. Okay. Um, and I brought 3 pages here for us, but I think as I was going to give one for each of you, but you can choose yours, okay, Tali. So I have 1 page for a language arts curriculum. For example, kindergartners, they are learning adjectives to describe other people. How each of those competencies could help. Or mathematics, third grade, they are learning division. And creative arts curriculum, fifth grade, learning about Native American art, how each of those competencies could help. And the idea on the Jamboard is for you to get a sticky note and write how you think each of those competencies could be embedded into your planning if you are that teacher, teaching arts or math or literacy. Okay?
Okay.
So I'm gonna put it on the chat, and you can join the Jamboard. You can take your time to fill it out. Choose your page. Choose the one you want to fill out, and you can ask me any questions. But the idea is for you to put your own thoughts on it, and use like 7, 10 minutes or 5. Use some 5 minutes. So use the time you think it's necessary to fill it out, and then we are going to discuss. Okay?
Okay.
But I'm going to be here. You can ask me questions anytime you want.
Okay. Well, so I'm choosing the third one, obviously.
Yeah, I thought of you.
um,
So you've chosen Native American art. Uh, what social awareness competencies could be developed when you were looking at Native American art? What self awareness topics could we handle, could we talk about? Okay, in a project like this. And then you try to think at least one idea for a way to embed each of those five competencies into your what would be your regular planning for a project about Native American art. Okay?